building the team, Gary Keller, the owner of Keller Williams, at an event, he said, unsophisticated investors try to time the market, where sophisticated investors understand that it's just having time in the market. What does that mean to you, Rory? Welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast, where we interview real construction owners doing big things within their life to give their family and their future overall victory. Today, we have Rory Cummins, owner of Cummins Builders and Cool B&B Management Portfolio. He's crushing it. He's been a GC since 2006. He does investing, he builds, he also has a short-term portfolio. He's got 18 doors, awesome net worth. And you're definitely going to want to learn this if you're trying to grow as a contractor. So stay tuned. Welcome, Rory. How you doing?
How's it going, buddy?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Truly blessed and highly favored, as I always say. Grateful, man. So tell us a little story. Before we dive into the meats and potatoes of your processes, your tips, your strategies, walk us through memory lane. How'd you get started? Because you got started right before the financial collapse, 2006. How did you get started?
Yeah, actually, I got started way earlier on the construction side. I started out in just general construction as a laborer, back when I was a teenager. That carried me 4 years as a laborer right into college. And then when I got out of college, I went back into construction. I was framing houses, roofing houses, doing stonework, all that kind of stuff. And then got into construction management on that side of things in 2006. That's kind of where I, managing residential construction on new construction. And was working for a production builder at the time, super busy. At any given point, year after year, it was 20 to 30 houses going at one time. And they didn't let up on me for years. It was like, I think I had about 250 homes because I did townhomes as well. So by the time I left that whole gig in 2013, that's about how many properties I had. I started investing in 2008, 2009 timeframe, and just really wanted to grow that whole leg of the business. Take what I know from the construction side, and actually, I started out house hacking before it was really a thing. Put your roommates in there, renovate it, refinance it, rent that out, and then take them with me to the next house, go renovate the next one. So I did that off and on for 6 years, and then slowly got into small multifamily, and never got away from the contracting side. I started doing my own remodels and eventually started doing flips. Done about 25 flips in the last 4 years, and then got into real estate brokerage in 2011 and really went full-time with that in 2015 while I was still contracting for others and doing flips on the side and starting short-term rental business. So I was pretty much wearing 3 to 4 hats there for the better part of the last 8 or 9 years now. And to this day, I'm still occasionally doing flips. I'm still doing new construction. A lot of the stuff we do now is just we hold it instead of sell it off. We're either remodeling or building to hold what we acquire on the short-term rental side. So I've been building that, and then my real estate brokerage keeps me busy during the day as well. And that has been growing steadily too. So thank God I have an assistant now. It has just gotten wide open, but everything's good. That's kind of the timeline of progression. I always thought I was just going to step out of construction fully like 5 or 6 years ago when I got really busy as a broker, and it just never panned out. It's so ancillary to everything that I do to find deals and
it's like so parallel. You're a real estate broker. You're getting, buying and selling real estate for clients. You're finding deals. You're able to fix them, win on the buy, rehab them, put a renter in it, refinance it, get your money back, go find a new deal. I mean, it sounds like it's 3 parallel things. And now you're about to implement the management. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, we've been in the B&B game since 2013. That's when we first started on that. And we have 15 of those right now, and we're building 4 new construction on those right now, and we'll probably be up to 20 or 25 doors in within the next 6 to 8 months. And as we've been doing that, a lot of our neighbors and friends and family, they're like, "Oh wow, talk to us about your short-term rental business," and that has basically just grown. And now we're managing for others over the last few months, and that'll probably scale up as well as we move from here. But we don't take on anybody. I would say we try to be in the top 5% of our market for short-term rentals. So if we were going to take something on, there has to be the right relationship and the right type of property. But that is definitely going to be something that is going to scale over time. So super excited.
Regarding your Airbnb business, do you have these? Where are you building those?
So I'm in the Southeast. I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina, but we try to stay in the tourism markets. I mean, I could do a whole podcast just on, where to find them or how we screen them. But at the end of the day, we try and stay at the beach markets or the mountain markets. So right now I'm in the North Carolina mountains. I'm in the old towns, historic towns, Savannah, Charleston. We've also looked at other markets, from here all the way down to Florida. We've looked at other mountain markets as well. Eventually, we'll probably head out of state, or I would say out of our region and actually go out west, or we've actually looked at international. But everything changes, as you know, like in construction, like if you've got your guys or your team, when you branch out of where your territory is, you got to reinvent the wheel and put everybody back together. And it's the same thing with short-term rental. So you got to know the local laws. You got to get your team together. And I like to be able to drive within a 4-hour radius too, instead of having to fly. So
that's awesome. So you basically, because I'm buying a real Airbnb real estate primary in Costa Rica right now on a river in the mountains, and I'll live there off and on. And when I leave, Airbnb just makes perfect sense depending on your strategy. And it sounds like it's been a good strategy. There is talk, shine some light on this since you have insights as a broker. Is there any obstacle you see with the Airbnb game or with the short-term rental game? Them having power to increase or decrease pricing, or what are some challenges you've heard on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting you brought up. We are doing our best right now to get off the platform, as in like, we don't want 100% of our business flowing through Airbnb. It is transferred from being very host heavy and making the right host decisions to being in the favor of a guest, right? Like all the decisions that they make when things arise has been very guest centric, if you will, so that we've lost our power as a host. So based on that, we are actively on other platforms, and we're trying to also build our direct booking platform. And that's one reason why we branded Cool B&Bs, because now we can direct book with people. And I would say we're at like 30 to 35% either direct booking or other platforms like booking.com or VRBO versus just Airbnb. Because yes, they will dictate, oh, well, somebody smoked in your house. Sorry, I'd love to, refund their money, or like you can't charge them for that. And it's like you as a host lose all your control when you're basically almost working for their company, if that makes sense. Like you own your property, but you don't. It's really this weird dichotomy that a host has with the Airbnb business, and they typically never take the host word for it. So you got to be really careful if you're going to be in that biz and try to retain control of your property.
Curious about that a little deeper regarding short-term and direct booking. How are you marketing those direct booking website? Do you just go straight to hotels.com, or what are some strategies you do?
Well, you've got a lot of options now. 3 years ago, there was very little management software that you could use for direct booking. We use IGMS, which is like Guesty. There's a lot of, like, I think Guesty also has a platform that you can use, and getting your place on there. Obviously, you're paying for their management software, but if they have access to be able to sync the calendar with Airbnb with the other platforms without having to, go crazy with trying to sort out all those different platforms. Like if you don't want double booking is like disastrous, right? So you got to be really careful about that part. But as long as that software can manage it, if they book through booking.com or hotels.com, it'll block out your calendar on Airbnb as an example. But the direct booking piece, they'll have their own platform through their website. What we did is we basically created our own website and then brought that to IGMS and basically said, how can you format that? And it's changing. It's not the best platform yet, but as we build, we will bring it back to our own brand and our own website instead of having to go through their software. The challenge is getting a software that can sync on the calendars.
Yeah. So switching topics regarding, you're a general contractor. So construction is in your blood. You know the struggles that come with construction, but you have made it to where not only are you a contractor, but you're an investor. So many contractors, they make the money, but then they just constantly stuck in operations, constantly stuck in buying the stuff, and then they can't get out of that. 15 years go by and they're like, what do they have to show for it?
Right.
Nothing. So what would you say are some of your top tips, strategies, things you'd recommend to a contractor who's hearing what I just said and said, man, I would like to learn how to become an investor? What steps would they take?
I think the biggest piece is it's a mindset shift. You got to start with your mindset first, and then getting leverage on yourself, right? A lot of times, especially contractors, they don't want to hire anything out, right? They may want to go swing their own hammer. Well, guess what? If you've got rentals and that toilet breaks, do you really want to go out there and deal with that? And that's probably the story in their head that's keep preventing them from going out and buying their own property. So really it's about, hey, I'm I'm gonna buy this asset, and somebody else is going to manage it. Somebody else is going to deal with all the issues that come up, so that I can just be an investor and not a landlord. And I think that's the distinction. That's the mindset shift that people have to make, is that it's not a time commitment once you bought the property and stabilized it. You rent it out, or you just let the management company rent it out. All you have to do is acquire the asset. Maybe you do a value add as a GC, and you turn the property to rentable condition, and you raise value, and then that's it. Go out and find the next one. It's a problem where they try and do everything themselves, and then because of that, it becomes a time element. And you know how it is in contracting is hard enough, and it's stressful enough that there's not a lot of time at the end of the day. So it's really about just starting that side gig to go and acquire properties, and then letting somebody else manage it instead of trying to be the guy.
Building the team. Gary Keller, the owner of Keller Williams, at an event, he said, unsophisticated investors try to time the market, where sophisticated investors understand that it's just having time in the market. What does that mean to you, Rory?
I like the phrase, what is it? Don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're so true, because you can't time it. I've had buyers that have been on the fence for like 3 or 4 years, and now look where we are.
Yeah.
It's just, it's already in transition again. But at the end of the day, you just got to jump in and do it. I mean, if you have the mindset as well that you will make mistakes and you're going to learn from them, that also takes the fear out of owning your own property. And then once you get that first investment, you've learned, the second one's going to be better. The third one's going to be even better. So you just got to get yourself in the game. And like I said, if you're not taking out all this extra time to manage that property, then to go find one and acquire it, it really doesn't take that long. I mean, you have so many options now. You could long-term rent it, you could short-term rent it, you could flip it, you could do all sorts of things, but you got to invest if you're going to get anywhere.
Yep. Love it. So curious, what's an expensive lesson that you have made in construction or investing, or both?
Well, luckily, I've made my fair share of mistakes on construction, where you have to maybe rip something out and do it right the second time. I think everybody's had that, but the biggest mistakes I've had, I would say, is getting under contract on something and having to back out during due diligence, or having something go sideways. And sometimes they say that, the best deal is the one you walk away from. So I've had to walk away from some very expensive deals where the numbers either didn't work out, or, we went under contract on a 17 unit, and during due diligence, we got in there and found out that one of the houses, it was a portfolio. One of the houses was literally on a truck bed frame as the foundation, but a truck bed foundation onto footings, and then built the house on top of it. It's just like 18-wheeler truck bed. You'd never know it, because they did like a curtain wall around the foundation.
Like a skirt.
Yes, they built a skirt around it. And we were under contract, we had like a 10K due diligence on there, and we spent like 5 more K in due diligence by the time we found that out. And we're like, all right, you can't fix that, right? What are you going to do? I'm not buying this. It's going to affect your value. So, stuff like that has been the biggest lessons I've learned, is try to scope things out as much as you can on the front end without putting too much money out there, or going with less due diligence if you can, or less money up front until you really get down to the nitty gritty. But to be honest, we walked away from that deal. That was a $2 million deal. And that was probably the best 10,000 I lost, because had I followed through with that deal, it would have been catastrophic probably on the back end. So
good advice. That's powerful. Best deal is sometimes the one you have to walk away from. Curious, as far as an investment that you've made that has surprised you, one of your best investments.
I would probably say it is one of our short-term rentals that we have right now. We lucked out during the COVID shutdown when everybody was freaking out. Like, this house popped up in the mountains, and it was like small, but I knew the market. We hadn't been in that market yet. It was the first time I looked at it, and they were selling the house for like $183,000. And at the time I was like, it's only a 2-bedroom, but this looks like a really good house. And we ended up buying it. We only had to put in about 30K, because the existing owner they had been short-term renting it before they were forced by the county to long-term rent it because of COVID. They weren't allowed to do nightly rental. So they were just like, you know what, we got a family over, we're just going to dump it, right? Well, we acquired it, put 30 in, and now that's our best property. It generates anywhere from 10 to 12K per month in revenue. So yeah, so like 200,000, we're in for like 220 or 215. And I think it did about 115,000 in annual revenue last year, as an example.
Good for you, man. That's awesome, dude. So I am just really curious. You have any more like that? Because that's like a grand slam, bro.
Yeah, we do. We do have I'm in one right now, up in the mountains right now. This is one of the ones we bought. We bought this one for like 360, and it does about the same in revenue. So it's not as good because our cost per door or basis is higher, but the returns are definitely there. So
so are you able to just like take your kids and your family and be like, all right, we're going to our mountain. All right, we're going to go to our beach. Okay, now we're going to go to our river home.
that's a funny thing you say that. This is where, in theory, yes. And I
Yeah.
have done it because I have 2 kids and we do travel. But to be honest, like we just went to a different beach this past weekend because our 2 places in Charleston are booked out. And that's the problem is typically you travel with your kids on a weekend because they're out of school. Well, if you're booking like an extraordinary rate, nightly rate on the weekend, you don't want to, there's a cost there, right? Like I'd rather I'll just go book the $200 a night place or whatever and just let the 500 night place rent out. So you can do it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what would you say is your role now within your construction company? What is your role now within your brokerage firm as well?
So I'm pretty much the guy on the construction side. I have a business partner that manages with me on the B&Bs. So I'm the guy that pulling permits and managing everything from the remodels, the new construction. And I always probably will be. I have an assistant that helps me now to order stuff, make calls, schedule things like that, which has been a game.
Unless you read the book Who Not How and decide that you're going to find your who.
You mean to replace me?
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to do their course this fall, to be honest with you. I read the book twice already. That's my theme for the year, actually, is Who Not How. To scale and leverage, because I have so many hats I'm wearing now. I get caught up, like, it's hard to even have this podcast, right? And it's not because I can't walk away from some of the business, but you don't want to walk away from your baby, right? But yeah, you're right. It is about finding my next replacement. So like up here in the mountains where we're building, I did hire another GC to part-time it with me because he's local. So he'll be my eyes and ears on the ground. I'll handle the, who we're going to use in the scheduling piece, and I'll let him show up and meet everybody. So he'll take a bulk of hours off of me, and my assistant will order everything, and my wife will pick everything out on design. So I got a little bit of a system going, but it's not where it needs to be.
I'm curious, a little bit technical right there. How do you find your best subcontractors? What are some tactics you finding actual good subcontractors? And also how do you protect yourself, your company, if you're not there on the job and they're working?
Finding subs is really freaking tough. I'm not going to lie. Like that is probably the toughest piece in construction, right? A lot of it for me, Justin, has just been trial and error. Referrals are always better than picking people out of the yellow pages, right? With the whole Google search. The most, the companies that show up with the best reviews are typically the most expensive. They might be the most available, maybe, but you're paying a premium. And then the best guys, are usually on referral, but they're usually like months and months out. So, and those are still the guys you want. You want to retain the guys that are months out, that aren't on the first page of Google, but you want to retain them and keep them busy, right? You want to over communicate on your scheduling, make sure you hit your dates, so you can retain them, pay them, the day that they finish, if you can, like pay them quick. And then they'll be coming to your job site in priority. So I think trial and error is unfortunately a lot of the way you got to go unless you can get good referrals. But I always say inspect what you expect, because you know how it is in construction, like how many times, do they do a job right? As far as like managing from afar, I'll be honest, man, I'm putting cameras up on my job sites, and that helps me keep the accountability factor when they show up, when they're putting trash out, or when other things happen on the job. I know that's not feasible everywhere you go, but other than having builder's risk insurance, there's not a whole lot else you can do unless you hire vendors. One of the things, I take it back. One of the things I do is I have a main crew that does 60% of all my work. They help me keep all my other trades accountable, right? So when the plumber shows up, he'll tell me if the guy showed up, did he do what he was supposed to do? Is there anything left on the job? Because that one crew is always on the job. So you can kind of tell me who's showing up and who did right and who didn't.
Yeah. Besides obviously having like written subcontract agreements and then taking photos, like that's smart that you have somebody on site who kind of be the facilitator for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not paying extra for that because they're doing all their work anyway, but the relationship is such that I can lean on him and he knows what's going on. Not easy to find that, but if you can find that, it definitely makes management way easier.
What's the last book you've read, cover to cover, that you thoroughly enjoyed?
Oh man, the last book, I'm reading 3 books right now. I'm reading Rocket Fuel. I'm almost done with it. Powerful book for me because I've always it's the difference between a visionary and an integrator. You can't have a solid business if you're doing both, right? Think like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, Paul Allen, whatever. Like you got to have somebody that implements all the vision. But if the visionary spends all their time implementing, the business won't succeed. So it's like trying to get the relationship so that you can free yourself from one or the other and do what you're best at based on that skill set. So that has been powerful for me. It's going to basically cause me to delegate more or hire out all the parts and pieces that I'm not going to be excelling at so that I can help build and scale to a higher level.
I love that. And you have seriously delivered, dropping bombs over here, Rory. If somebody is wanting to join a good team of contractors or possibly want to come sell real estate, or they need, they have property that they need a good manager, property manager, how can they reach out?
I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. My email address is rc6260@gmail. Either of those would be fine. And then on the cool, our brand with Cool B&Bs is just coolbnbs.com. Pretty straightforward and simple. But yeah, I mean, all the contracting stuff, like I said, is all, it's all kind of in-house and kind of built for the businesses, if you will. Trying to build that. I've thought about starting up a separate GC division, but I got to
What would you go after?
Probably remodels. To me, remodeling is more fun, even though it's way more complex. New construction is kind of cool, but it's just, you're looking at a 6 to 8 month turn versus a remodel that could take 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're building an addition, which might take a little bit longer, but there's a lot more creativity and a lot more complexity, which I like the challenge. So sometimes I just do flips because they're fun. My wife and I really, we enjoy, going from like what it was to what it can be. In new construction, you're just creating something from scratch. To me, that's all about architecture, to make it really cool.
Yeah, I'm curious. It seems like you're a person of growth. Like you're always, just like myself, you're seeking knowledge. What masterminds are you part of that have helped you to develop these types of skills that increased your mindset?
Yeah, really good question, man. So I'm big into personal development. I've dumped a lot of money over the years into doing all of that. I've taken a ton of courses, been to a ton of seminars, and done a lot of smaller mastermind groups. The three most recent, I did M1, which is M1 is very similar to GoBundance, which I'm also in, as you are. Those have been instrumental in just kind of building a good network of people and getting the accountability from other peers. It's not just what you gain from the group itself, but to me, it's all about accountability and just being surrounded with people that are like-minded and really doing big things in life. There's been some others that I was a part of, but those two were probably the biggest stepping stones for me in the last 4.5 years. So
yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you giving a shout out to GoBundance, because I was on the fence for years of trying to, should I spend the money? Should I join this thing? I'm doing just fine. But then I realized, like, I've seen people just like 2 and 3x and 4x, and I'm like, okay, well, I have the money. I could figure it out and spend all these years, or I could just spend the money and get all their shortcuts. So listeners, if you're looking for a great mastermind and you like to grow yourself, go to gobundance.com, fill out the form. You have to be invited to it, and they don't accept everybody. Make sure you tell them Justin from RCO sent you. They have a special offer for you. And Rory, if you were to give one last nugget to somebody who's trying to systemize their business, because it sounds like you've got all these different businesses, you must have good systems and processes in place. What would you say is the system or process you're most proud of within your company?
I mean, I can talk about productivity all day long, right? Because I think for what I'm doing right now, managing 3 to 4 different businesses, I've got to be laser focused in how I spend my time. I am a huge proponent of planning your week, the week in advance, and those commitments or priorities that you do for the week is a reflection of your yearly goals. I literally read my yearly goals every single morning. I review every single one on my plate, and that spills down to my quarterly goals. And then that spills down to weekly and then daily. And then I prioritize my day. I use the Ivy League method, which is the productivity planner I use has it in there, but a Clear Habit Journal. It's the same one David Osborne uses. But
oh wow, yeah. When you mentioned David does it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's where I took that from, and I've kind of taken it a step further in how I do my day. But anyway, the Ivy League method says, like, what are the top, top 5 or top 6 things that are on for your day? Prioritize those in order, and anything you don't get done, bring it to the next day, and do them in order, right? Don't procrastinate and don't do anything else until you get those done. And that'll really help you stay laser focused in making sure that those are reflective of your actual yearly goals, right? Because if you're familiar with the 4 quadrants, right, of productivity, quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's the quadrant 2 stuff that matters. That's the stuff that really moves the needle, but it's not always super urgent. They don't really scream the loudest, but it's the stuff that really matters, relationships and other stuff. So you can't get that out of sync. The book, The One Thing, that was probably the biggest game changer for me back in 2018 when I first read that, to really hone in about what really matters and where I need to put my time so that I could really scale up and do big things.
So many nuggets right here. Rory, we talked about you as a general contractor, you doing brokerage and aligning that real estate business with your GC business. We talked about how you got it a short term and now how you're aligning that with Cool B&B's management. It sounds like you're laser focused, and that's why you acquired 19 doors and you have such a awesome net worth. This has been fun. Thank you. Until our next podcast. Take care, brother.
See you, buddy. Thanks for having me.